Good afternoon. I hope the day finds everyone well. Just gonna make sure everything is in its right place. Oh. We have 2 pages to finish today. Well, 3 actually, because this one's not done, I remember, from yesterday. Okay. Let's just dive straight into it, shall we? Alright, that's done. Oh. Hello, soggy bread. Yay? Yay what? Yay that we're here. I'm also happy that we're here. Yay stream, okay. Yes, yay stream. Alright, this page is done. Okay. I should be packing for my trip, but meh. Oh, Soggy, you've got to do that. Think how much happier future Soggy will be if you get the packing done. Maybe if you don't feel like packing just yet, you could... Do you have a list of all the things you have to, like, take? You could write that all down so that you don't forget it. That way you feel like you're doing something. It's like a little warm-up. Packing, that way you'll have less of a mental load when you actually do sit down to pack. You should do that? Yeah. Come on, use me for body doubling and make a list. I start my day with a to-do list. It's the only reason I stay on track. It's also only 4 days, so I don't need much. Okay, even better. It'll be a short list. Why keep things in your head when you don't have to? Now granted, a lot of my to-do listing habits come from like managing ADHD, but I feel like even if you don't have ADHD, it is a useful tool to use. Lists are great. You export your memory and then you don't have to worry about it. That way you free up your brain to enjoy other things. Especially if it just like keeps reminding you that, oh, this is a thing I gotta do, this is a thing I gotta do. It can like help quiet that down if you've like written down everything and you're like, oh, okay, now I see the scope of what I need to do. And then you can focus on other things. Lists have so many benefits. I really only need a book so I can avoid everyone. Okay. Well, what about clothes? Toiletries, personal items, phone, wallet, keys. Fair. Might need clothes. Soggy. Soggy, write it down. And if not write down, then Notes app on your phone. You are presumably using a device to type into chat. Open up a Notes app and write it down. If you write your to-do list, I'll give you a boop. Can I bribe you with that? I wrote down clothes? Excellent! Good job! Now underneath clothes, write down which clothes. And how many. And toothy brush? Good. Don't forget the toothy paste. And floss. Also write down the book you're gonna take. Apparently flossing is the most important. I mean, it's how you get stuff out from between your teeth. I need to get better at flossing too. I don't have the best habits. But I'm working on it. I found that out way too late. Oh no. Well, no better time than the present to start remedying. In fact, you have no other time but the present. reading the solo leveling light novels right now. Oh, neat. And The Black Tongue Thief by Chris Boop. I'll be honest, Soggy, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. But that's neat. Good books, write that down. HR over on YouTube. Hi. OMG, that's so cool, thank you. Thanks very much. What was I doing? Right. I'm not down there. I don't really need a sound effect for the door. I think we're good. I think we're good. Small. That's one. We're gonna do the background, and then I'll do the magic layer. And then once the magic is done, we can focus on the figures. Yeah. Where do you post this comic afterwards? On Webtoon? It's on Tapas. So you're over on the YouTube side. So if you scroll down into the description underneath the live stream, you're gonna see links to all of my comics. This comic on screen is a sequel to a comic called Bones Tarot, which is complete. And you can read it on Tapas. The first 8 chapters are free. After that, it is on a wait until free timer. So you can dive straight into the story if you enjoy a second chance romance queer crime thriller. Is what this is. Fun stuff. Where's my water? Oh goodness. I've got wires in the way. Alright. Is it BL? It is. Yes. Yes it is. This is a sequel, and there's lots of crazy things happening in the sequel that are not related to Bones Tarot. It's a very different story. Very much continuation. It fills in a gap between chapters 31 and 32 in the original Bones Tarot, because I did a time skip. And so Partners is what happened in that in-between time. Yeah. Thank you so much. You're welcome. Thank you for showing interest in it. If you read it, I hope you like it. I think in the description there should be a thing to like my free newsletter, and if you subscribe to the newsletter, you can get a PDF for Bones Tarot Volume 1 for free, if you're interested in that. So all the links and stuff should be below for you. No worries. Do I need... Oh, there's something... No, I don't. No, I think we're fine. So we're gonna just put a lock on that, make it yellow, and over here, make this yellow, because we're gonna color it later. And now, let's do the same thing here. We'll do the backgrounds, then we'll do the magic layer, and then we'll go do the figures. Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, I lost my... Right. I lost my coloring templates. So we're gonna come up here. And I'm gonna get the background colors from an earlier page. How long does it take you to finish a chapter? So right now, because I'm working on like 5 different projects, I'm making about 4 pages a month for Partners, but I'm also making like 8 pages for My Gentle Giant, and sometimes doing render. I'm doing render coloring for a different side gig comic. And I have a Patreon exclusive comic, which I try to make as many pages of that per month as I can, so... I mean, this chapter we've been doing for a few months now, but that's because, like, it's been going slowly. But if I was working on just Partners by itself, I feel like I could easily get like 12, 13 pages done in a month and finish a chapter in 2 months if I was like pacing myself. Maybe in 1 month if I was being efficient. I don't know. Each chapter has a different number of pages, so I kind of like count by panel for the scenes. But I can tell you that each page takes about 3 hours to create from start to finish, assuming I have a script written and ready to go. There we go. So over on Twitch. Tell YouTube chatters to stay away from Davis, he's mine. Soggy, you're gonna have to share. Davis is the most popular character. We've been through this. Also for you, Soggy, you would have to get through Thaddeus first. You've seen how he is. Silly. He's your cute boy? Alright, well if you say so. Of course I'm interested, girl. Aw! Appreciate it. Alright. I think we got the colors. So we're gonna come over here. Everything's nicely organized. Yay! This here. And right down here. The colors are going to be different. So we're going to extract the lines. Okay. Right click, convert layer, vector layer. Choose the object tool. I'm going to change the brush shape to a bit husky so it looks like it's drawn. I'm going to thicken the lines, not that thick. Right. Oh, right. And the softer edges. That'll do. That'll do. We can clean it up a little. Right, and then the door is like... Now I made the door dark. I feel like I made it too dark before, so... Cool. You're so underrated? Oh, I appreciate that, HR. Thanks. I mean, to be fair, I do stream regularly. You will see the schedule for the streams again in the description below. I dual stream on YouTube and Twitch. And... I mean, I stream, but I'm not really a streamer. Making the comics is my full-time job. I mostly stream as a way to, like, connect to new readers, or just to have company. I like to say that this is my workday, and y'all just happen to be here. And it's nice. So... Sometimes I talk a lot on stream, if I've got, like, stuff to say. Other times, it's, like, quiet drawing time. Some people use me for body doubling when they want to get stuff done. And fun stuff like that. It's a really chill time here. I keep glancing over and your messages are redacted. What's wrong? Yeah. Got that. What? Yep. Hey Soggy, how's your packing list coming? Ads on their way on Twitch. I wish I joined earlier. It's all good, HR. No time like the present. Just trying to understand, do you start by sketching the OCs first in the background and then color after that? So the process goes storyboard, sketch, well, alright, write the chapter, script it, more or less, make sure you got, I do panel by panel, and I just like write down what goes on each panel. And then storyboarding is deciding how much can fit on the page based on how much dialogue I've written. Then come the sketches, part of pre-production is also doing concept art. So for this chapter, for instance, I had a quick sketch up of just like the important bits that I needed to draw for each of the characters. Designs. The color palette is over here on this side for later. So storyboard, sketch, line work. We're currently put down the base flats, which is the foundational colors, and you're gonna see how I do the rendering, which is what makes everything all like colored in and pretty. On Friday, if we finish these 2 pages today, which is my goal, I'm gonna finish these 2 pages today. On Friday, when I start stream from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time Zone, I'm going to be doing storyboarding because I need to start working on brand new pages for My Gentle Giant, which is a different comic. So if you're free Friday, there will be like in my YouTube under the live tab, the live streams, there will be a live stream on Friday if you're interested in seeing how I storyboard and sketch stuff. As well as probably make, I need to make some concept art because I'm introducing a new character. But yeah. You're cleaning your kitchen? So you've left the to-do list to clean the kitchen? Well, I can't blame you for that, Soggy. I won't be here. Soggy, it's okay. Soggy, you've seen me sketch before. You need to enjoy your trip. All things are temporary. So you'll miss one stream, it's no big deal. I want to see it again. You'll get to see it again. Probably. I've got to do sketches for chapter 16 for partners. If we finish these 2 pages today, then after My Gentle Giant is done, we're gonna come back to partners and we're gonna sketch later in the month. So you'll get the chance. It's okay. Yes, girl, I'm literally confused on how to make a comic. Everything seems so difficult. Yeah, if you're not used to it, I'm not gonna say it's easy to make a comic. It's not. This is hard. This is hard to do. It's hard to figure out your process. It's hard to do it all together. But if you break it down into its component parts and you focus on getting good on each component part at a time, that's what really helps. Like, the thing with comics is you only learn how to make comics by making them. And just to prove my point, when I started making comics in 2015 on Tapas, my first comic, Cake and Coffee, is still on there. If you click on it, it is awful. It's not a great comic. It's like, it's cute enough, but the dialogue bubbles are terrible. It's not colored. It's only line work. It's not great. But you know what it is? It's done. It is finished. It is at least a complete story, and it is online. So it's okay to be like, oh man, this is like really, really hard. But like each step is I mean, how to put this? Because I'm the sort of person where if I see something that it's really difficult to do, it makes me even more motivated to do it in a sort of like, you know, like watch me, I'll figure this out sort of way. Anything that you look at holistically can look really difficult until you break it down into its pieces, and then each step starts to look more manageable. After that, it's about practice and honing your craft. Because art is one thing, skills and craftsmanship are another whole thing. Technical skill does not necessarily mean being an artist. Because art is about expression. It's the type of story that I'm trying to tell. It's the manner in which I draw the characters. Hi, Ramen! Oh, this is the first time Ramen's seeing me. Ramen wasn't here when we turned on the webcam yesterday. We have a bot in the chat. I got rid of the bot. I banned the bot. Flapper was busy today, so I am the mod. Anyway, I got distracted, but like, yeah, HR, if you like, I mean, I have a ton of live streams already made, so if you ever want to like peek through that, you would be able to find pretty much every single step of my personal comic making process. I'm really like I'm really organized about it, and I've been doing this for like over 10 years, so like I'll be honest, I am a bit extra when it comes to my process, but that's only because I've been doing this for like a hecking long time, and I can't help myself. I really like it when things are like pretty and shiny and with bright saturated colors, and to do that I've ended up just like doing things the way that I do. Okay. There. Good. I need not this. I need a color from before. Same as the floor. No, it's not. Great. Forward. Don't need that. I don't need this. Save. Right. Save. Save. Lighting is done. Yep. Over here. Lighting is done for the backgrounds here. So we'll check that off. Over here. With that, the backgrounds are done. Oh. Awesome. Someone on YouTube? Yeah, there's a buddy on YouTube, Ramen. What was your first comic called? I want to go and check it out. It's called Cake and Coffee. You can find it on Tapas. Don't expect anything good out of it. Just know that it exists, and it was made when I was 10 years younger. I was 22. I didn't know anything. Anyway, Flapu is lacking. Did you mean slacking? Ramen, no. Flappo's busy at work. Flappo volunteers their time to mod for Twitch. They're busy. Give Flappo a break. Okay. Set that up. Put that there. Good. Alright, I said we were gonna do the magic first, didn't I? I did say that. Okay. So... there. Base. We only need it on these two panels. That's not it. Alright, one of my all-time tips, if you're going to be drawing anything digitally ever, is learn all of your shortcuts. Now, if you're in Clip, you can make your own shortcuts. Keyboard shortcuts. I mean the control plus whatever letters are necessary. That is the fastest way to get more efficient. Know your shortcuts, use the shortcuts. Like, I can move my canvas around just by holding down spacebar because it turns into the hand tool. Alt, Control, Shift. Learn all of those things. Don't you want your life to be easier? Sarah, guess what? What is it, Ramen? What's up? You're redeeming Boop the Snoop. Alright, fine. Come over here. Are you ready? Oh good, you get to have the Snoop, Boop the Snoop with the webcam. I'm gonna assume Ramen's ready. Are you ready? Here we go. Here it comes. Boop. That's for you. Happy? Yep. Ramen's happy. I'm literally clueless. It's all good, HR. We all start somewhere. Like, I have learned a lot making comics these last few years. I've learned from like stuff in a more professional setting, as well as from the hobbyist, as well as what I'm doing right now, which is freelancing. There are best practices with webtoons. There are certain expectations that readers have if you're going to make a webtoon for mobile. For instance, you see that this is in a page format. I do not upload in a page format. Every time we're getting ready to set up the page for mobile, I take out the panels, I take out my dialogue, and I reformat it to suit the frame of the phone. But because I'm old-fashioned and because it is literally faster to work in a page format, because I hate scrolling up and down to work on my own art, the reformatting is just, it's faster and easier to do. And I want to print it eventually. It also makes for easier PDFs to sell later on. Get that passive income. Which is not so passive, because you have to be advertising your comic all the time. But that's it. In the end, all a comic is telling a story through a series of images. It is serial image storytelling. if you have a story to tell, no matter if it's a joke or a gag or like a character study or whatever, then I find the best way to learn how to make a comic is by sitting down and trying to make a comic. You'll learn pretty quickly how to start Googling, how do I use the paneling tool on Clip? Where do I find comic fonts that are free to use? Which pen is good for my line work? How do I change the pen pressure settings to suit my hand? You learn very quickly what your limitations are just by trying to do it. You don't have to know everything before you start, and that's usually a trap. If you feel like you have to learn everything before you start doing it, that's not helpful to one's growth. In fact, knowing that you don't know anything going in is a really healthy beginner's mind place to start, because you don't know the rules yet, which means you can be a lot more creative. You're not restricted. You know, you can try stuff out. You can make mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes. I have been prideful in how I made comics, and it turned out that my pride got in the way of best practices. And I started to understand why comics are made the way that they are, for readability, for accessibility, for reader retention and stuff. Something as simple as making sure your dialogue is easy to read on a phone is the difference between people staying to read your comic and people looking at it and be like, I can't read this, and then they just yeet the comic across the room. Right? Stuff like that. I'm here on both places. I'm ascending. Oh my god, Ramen. Ramen, this is too much stimulation for you. You're going to get overstimulated. You can't have me on stereo. It's not good for the young mind. Silly. Did I say it? I say it. Oh. Do you have to pay to make comics? Like in Ibis Paint X, if you want more brushes or stuff, you gotta pay, right? I don't know about Ibis Paint X, but there are people who... I mean... Not really, actually. If you have a drawing tablet already, or a drawing software already, you really don't need anything super fancy to make the comic. You could... I mean, people sometimes, they hand draw their own, like, boxes, and then they draw inside the boxes, and they put in whatever comic font comes with their software to start with, right? And then they put the comic out, and so on. It's kind of like you just have to be as creative as you need to be to make your story. There's no sort of like you don't need to buy stuff. For the longest time, I used like a lot of free resources to do my backgrounds, and I would hand draw my backgrounds, and it's only after I started seeing some success in the field did I get a subscription to Google SketchUp, and then I started buying 3D backgrounds from Acon 3D. But I started doing all of that after I was in the habit of making comics every day, of having finished Bones Tarot, actually. I didn't use 3D backgrounds in Bones Tarot until the very last chapter. Like, I was using Homestyler, But I was drawing on top of the 3D backgrounds because I couldn't figure out how to like integrate it into my art. So I would like draw on top of it and I would transform the screenshot into the background that I needed. Then I learned from there. So like you don't need to start with an investment into comics. You just need a story to tell, and you do your best to tell it. I would recommend not starting with your most precious story. I'd start by doing a practice story. Because comic making is a multidisciplinary craft. Especially if you're trying to do a webtoon, because not only do you have to know how to tell a story, structure the story, edit your story, you have to learn to compose your panels, learn to compose the page, learn how to compose the dialogue bubbles so that people can, like the eye can follow it. There's like theories behind that. And then all of the things to do to draw well. And then color, if you're gonna color. Flat colors are perfectly fine. No colors is perfectly fine. In the end, you get better at the thing by doing it, and by evaluating the results, and then changing it as you move forward, but never going back to fix things. That's why I've never gone back to, like, redraw Cake and Coffee. I'm just like, it is what it is, and it's gonna stay this way, no matter how cringy it makes me feel. Because it's a bit of like, it's like a touchstone to help me see how far I've come. The way I grew in making comics is being like, okay, I just learned how to do a thing, I learned how to fix it, I'll fix it on the next page. Or I'll fix it in the next chapter. But whatever mistakes I made at the present moment, it's just gonna have to stay in. And I found that readers don't really mind. They don't really care. If anything, readers love seeing you grow from the start of your comic to the end of it. Nice art may hook people, but a good story is what keeps them. And so, like, you know, the more you invest in learning how to write a good story, or at least learn how to write your stories, and worry about it being good later. Because there's no way to predict what will do well and what won't. But, yeah. Sarah, the link to your comics won't work? Oh no! Wait, seriously? Hand panel, please? Can I see the hand panel? What hand panel? You mean where they're holding hands? There you go, Ramen. Ibis Paint is good. I haven't used Ibis Paint, but there are lots of really good art programs out there, I have no doubt. No, no, no? Not that hand panel? What? Ear panel? Soggy, alright. You guys are gonna have to be more specific with your demands. Sarah, the link to... Okay, right. Let me check the live stream. Cause that's weird. Should? Oh my goodness. Silly little stories. Oh, someone new showed up. I didn't even notice. Hello. Remember the one with the chibi face? Ramen, we're not working on that page right now. I can just leave it open for you in the corner, I suppose. If it makes you happy. My goodness. You guys are so silly. There, happy? I'm over here trying to make sure the links on the YouTube video are working, and y'all are like, hand panel! Show it to me! We demand it! For goodness sake. Which link were you trying to press, HR? Do you know which one isn't working? Hold on. How dare, what? There's a typo? Typo's thought. Hey, hold on. That is definitely my comic. What's going on? Alright, hold on. I think I know what happened. I have to go live. And yeah, I need to fix it. The Bones Tarot. Make it an emote? You want the Davis face as an emote? But not exclusive? I mean, yeah, we do have some free emotes left. I guess we could make this face into an emote, yeah. Alright, put a pin in that. Let me fix the link first. Analytics, stream that. Oh no, wait, can I? No, I can edit it. I can edit it. Tapas.io series, Bones Tarot /info. That's probably what it was missing. Save. What? Oh my goodness. Oh, problems with it. Alright. Whatever typo I did, it should be fixed now. You should be able to get to Bones Tarot. Okay. Next thing's next. Oh my goodness. Fine, let's make the emote. This is, I'm gonna name it like Davis Wow or something like that. Oh god, it's so tiny. Oh, that's the full size. Panel. There we go. How about that? Will that work for you guys? Hello mortals, I've come from Lord Sera's Twitch. Oh, for goodness sake, Ramen. Why am I not #1 anymore? I don't know. I don't know how YouTube's little, like, ranking stuff works. Also, in 30 seconds, there's gonna be an ad on Twitch. I apologize if I miss it. Again. Yeah. Okay, hold up. I forgot we had the little No Bully Davis. You know, Davis is gonna create the majority of our emotes now if we're not careful. Wait, I need to make a PNG of this, right? Yeah. I've got a bunch of like little pictures that I use on Discord. Okay. Yeah, YouTube rankings is like, I don't know how it works, and I'm too scared to ask, and I think it just has to do with like typing in the chat, and it probably has a recency bias, so like if you show up, I don't know. It's supposed to increase engagement. What am I doing? I'm adding you guys a Twitch emote. that everyone can use. It won't be locked to, like, tier 1 subs or whatever. Well, I'm supposed to be number 1. See, this is why they shouldn't gamify chat. It tears us apart. It makes you fight each other. That's no way to live. Your rewards. Emotes. Okay. Alright, I'm gonna bring this over here so I'm not craning my neck. Okay. We have 3 open slots. We're gonna put in my Discord emoji. I'm gonna find Davis. Flopoo is number 1. Flopoo's our mod, for those who are new. Flopoo's busy today. Sarah, don't you get mad when you read a comic and the plot or scenes are totally not what you expected, and then you realize the guys ain't even real? Sometimes. I only get mad when the image file size is too large. I only get mad at a story if, like, if I'm already attached, and then, yeah, then it does a bait and switch, and then I do get mad. But if the story's good enough to sort of, like, save itself, then it's like, I'm still angry, but I respect it. And then other times when, like, something just does not make sense, I'm just like, wow, I hate this, and then I rewrite it in my heart, and I move on with my life. I've done that so many times with so many stories. Yes, I want to replace it. You're small enough now. I feel like, I mean, I can check its size once it saves. I'm just being too lazy to do it. Where is it? Ad? Ad alert? I know, the ad came and went. Ramen, you're on YouTube. Bye, I guess. Oh, bye, silly little stories. Goodbye, thank you for coming by. Flopoo is there? Wait, what? Flopoo... Ramen, that is a lot of letters and a lot of all caps. I hate True Beauty. True Beauty is a... It's a really big comic, and hold on, this is taking forever to load. I'm gonna refresh. Let's try this again. It's too large. That webtoon is literally the worst. I mean, it's not really my genre, so I haven't paid much attention to it. I did start reading it, but like, resolution of maximum size 1 MB. Are you okay with JPEGs, or does it have to be... Because if I can make this a JPEG, that would make life easier. Wait, what happened? Will you accept? No. Only PNGs. Okay. Let's just make it smaller. Surely it's less than 1 MB now. Great. It's like 560 kilobytes. There we go. We're gonna call this one Davis. Wow. There we go. If you refresh on Twitch, you should be able to use the Davis Wow emote now. I'm sorry, HR, that your ship didn't sail. That's one of the things where I'm just like, this is what fanfiction is for. Like, I recently experienced a story in which a character died that I adored. I had my mourning time, and then I'm like, this is what fanfics are for. It will heal my broken heart. Sometimes that's all they get. Yeah. Because, like, you can't tell somebody else how to write their own story. So it reaches a point where you're like, if you're just reading something and raging at it, maybe it's better to just let go. Just let it go. It can't hurt you unless you let it. But I mean, in a way, it's good that stories make you feel something. It shows you're engaging with something that someone else has created, even if it is to look at it with disapproval. Like the story in which my favorite character died, I don't think I'll ever forgive them for it, but they're still writing a really damn good story, so I'm like, I begrudgingly respect this. I was hurt. But as a creator as well, I'm just like, I can't be mad. You're just telling the story you want to tell. And I think that's just part of the experience of engaging with stories. You have it? I see. There we go. Ramen's already playing with the new Twitch emote. I hate that feeling. Yeah, I know, HR. It's the risk we take to read stories. Sometimes they're gonna hurt us. Just like how sometimes life hurts us. But a good story would know how to, like, pick you up a little bit afterward, though it does depend on the genre. If going into the story you know that this thing's gonna be like a tragedy from the beginning, it's kind of on you to have kept going on it, which is the situation I find myself in. But I can't let it go. The story has me by the throat. Well, that's me. It's been a while since I've been really animated by a story, so I cannot let this one go. It is remarkably good. I'm enjoying it. It hurts me, but I'm enjoying it. Tragedy. Indeed, Ramen. Yes, that's the word. Sometimes some stories are just tragedies. That's why I think it's important to exercise self-care when engaging with stories. Because while the stories and the people in the stories are fictional and fake, the feelings that a story makes you have are real. And that's where the power of storytelling comes from. The feelings that a story invokes in you are real and valid, just as much as the feelings that are invoked by, like, real life things. Our ability to suspend disbelief and engage with imagination makes our brains stronger. And stories are a good and safer arena in which to experience certain emotions. that we may not always get to engage with in life. Especially if, like, you have to suppress certain emotions. They can be expressed by reading stories. And I think that's neat. That looks pretty. Okay, so that's done. We just have to do one more sparkly bits for the magic. These are done. Now magic is done, and now we can focus on the figures. I do a time check. It is 2:11. We have an hour and 50 minutes. Lines are done. Clean that up. Close this. And come down here. Magic is done. Magic is done. Don't need that layer. Close that up. Close this up. And then here. Alright. I think we're ready to put in the flat colors now. Nuh-uh, stream just started. What you talking about? Ramen. Ramen, we've been through this. Are you guys having fun with your new emote? I spoil you guys. I spoil you guys way too much. Honestly, what kind of cult leader am I? Oh wait, new person didn't know the joke? Which joke? Because in a short amount of time, we've really added to the jokes. It's alright, I don't think the new person's here. Oh, the cult one? Ah, the cult one is one that you learn after a couple of streams. Sometimes I remember to bring it up, sometimes I don't. Again, what kind of cult leader am I? I should be recruiting at all times. Now I learned the first one because I have a baby. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I had to be upfront. Gotta know what's going on. Maybe a cult leader, but I am responsible. I'm awake. Oh, I'm fine. I can do this. I'm not sleepy. I'm not tired. I need to do the face stuff first. Okay, I'm back. Welcome back, Soggy. Oh, your boss called? Well, that's important. It's okay, you didn't miss much. We're doing the flats now. I finished the magic. Now I can spam. Haha, you have a job, Robin! Yes, us adults need to have jobs to survive. 'Tis important. Enjoy it while you can, Ramen. Enjoy it while you can. Wow. The auto mod is like Ramen is bullying by calling Soggy a crybaby. Ramen, you cry too. Both of you do, in fact. Yeah, you do, using a bunch of cry emojis every time I have to end stream. Come on. Yaha. What do you mean, nah? You can't gaslight me, that's my job. Man, why is Marcus so cute? Look at him. Big lug. He's smooching. Where's the vacuum? What? Ramen, I don't get it. I don't either. So you're just making stuff up, Robin? I thought it was like some Gen Z alpha slang. You're not even Gen Z, you're Gen Alpha. You baby. Oh no. One of my speakers fell over. Oops. I was born 2011, so there's a whole debate. Oh, it may be on the border. I now understand how people older than me feel when I would tell them when I graduated high school. I graduated high school in 2011. Osagi! Head and hands, I know. I know. Time. It comes for us all. It's okay, Soggy. It's okay. This is no time to fall to despair. It's time to keep up with the younger generations. We gotta be good examples of adults. We're not old, we're adults. We have wisdom to give. Ostensibly. Though, I'm not sure you'd be able to tell with, like, YouTubers and, like, I don't know, social media. Same with my dad, born in 1981, so this whole debate if he's one generation or the other. I feel like 81 is solidly... What's it? Hold on. Gen X, Y, Z. So I'm between Y and Z. I was born in 93. Which would make me like a baby millennial, but it's so close to the Gen Zers that I'm like a zillennial. It's like in between. Oh, I guess 81 would be in between. I feel like that's solidly like older millennial. Yeah? Skibidi Rizzler. Alpha Ohio. What the hell? Alpha? Alpha's been a word since a while. That's not Gen Alpha. I mean Gen Alpha. Plus Skibidi comes from like it's Skibidi Boop Bop Bop. It's from like way back. It's scat music, right? That's what it's called. That's where that comes from. And then Riz is just the center of charisma, so that's just slang for charisma, which honestly I kind of like the word Riz. I think it's neat. 26? Oh, Sophie! Savi, compared to me, you still baby. Well, not that big of a baby. You're like solidly adult. By 25, your brain has finished like composing itself. Hot Sita? Oh, hello! I come from the YouTube Live. HR, oh, hello! Welcome to YouTube. There's an ad in about 50 seconds. And it lasts for 1.5 minutes. So I'll try to pay attention to when it shows up. Cause the ad is gonna come for hot seitan ramen. Oops. Jeez. I know ramen, but I gotta get my 2 cents somehow. That's... Don't worry, I won't do anything important during the ad. Pay attention this time. Redeem Squish the Squish? Okay, after we're back from the ad, we'll do Squish the Squish. I'll show you the other squish thing. It's a little hand exercise grippy tool. Why are the ads not starting? They're taking their sweet time. There we go. There's the ad. Only Soggy can see me now. One minute left. Sera, are we bothering you though? "20 seconds left in ads." Oh, we're back from ads. We're back from ads? It hurts, make it stop. Ramen, calm down. Ramen, you're fine. For goodness sake. Y'all distracting her for this nonsense? Don't worry, HR. This is actually par for the course. If I didn't want to be distracted during the workday, I wouldn't be streaming. So, it's to be expected. At least ask her useful questions. Nah, they mostly bully me. It's to be expected. Alright, so Squish the Squish Redeem it comes from like using a stress ball to warm up your wrists. So, say hi to Mango. Mango's not really a stress ball, it's actually very soft. So I got these, which are, they're like little exercise things to help increase your grip strength. Because you can improve, or you can protect yourself from repetitive strain injuries like tennis elbow and carpal tunnel if you work on your grip strength, which increases the muscle strength on your forearms. Because sometimes if your upper arm muscles are stronger than the lower arm muscles, it can cause pressure on your tendons and your joints. And that's what causes like aches in the joints. So if you work on your grip strength, for instance, and it increases the muscles on your forearms, so like this muscle here, and then all the muscles that are on top there, it helps balance out the pressure put on your joints, which aren't necessarily as strong as your muscles. And so Squish the Squish is to make me actually work on this, and this is currently at 10 or 15 kilograms. So my right grip strength is that strong. My left grip strength is weak as all heck. This is on the lowest setting, which is 5 kilos for my left hand. And I can get it. I can just barely get it. And then you have to keep it for a little bit in basically what you would call an isometric hold, where you hold yourself in position until you can't. As opposed to repetitions if I was just like moving back and forth. And so if I do this regularly, ideally it'll increase the strength in my forearms. So if you have a stress ball and you plan on doing like a lot of typing or a lot of drawing, the reason tech conferences and stuff pass out like stress balls, and I have like this little cloud thing. It's got like cybernetics.com or whatever. So this is like the reason stress balls exist is to increase blood flow in your hands, because if you increase blood flow and you warm everything up, your hand is less tense, it'll be less likely to cause a repetitive strain injury on your wrists and your elbows. So it's important if you're like regularly on the computer, you're regularly typing, you're regularly, you know, for me, even if I draw from the shoulder, my shoulder gets sore. So it's important for me to do stretches for that. Stuff like that. Have you learned what? Are we talking about the cult thing? Guys, calm down. You're gonna scare HR away. Don't worry about it. This is normal on Twitch. Don't worry about it, for real. Yeah, so I've been doing this for a really long time. I regularly work out. I practice martial arts. So thankfully my body has enough muscle to keep from getting too achy while I draw. I have also limited the amount of hours that I spend drawing, which is why I'm trying to do more writing to supplement my drawing time. And that also helps mitigate, because the older I get, the easier it is for my limbs to get sore because I'm no longer as nimble as I was in my 20s. And it's fine. We adjust. Sarah, is it possible to make comics on a phone? Yeah. Like, there's Clip Studio for the phone. I think it gives you like an hour's worth of free time to use it on like a constant trial or something like that. I think it's like an hour a day or something. But anyway, there are art programs on the phone, and I mean, you could. Like, it's certainly possible. Is it something I would do? Personally, no. I don't like working on such a tiny screen. In fact, the webcam is currently mounted on top of a 22-inch drawing tablet, which I'm working on in front of me. So, like, personally, because I went to college and I studied animation, I had a whole bunch of like drawing classes, and we were taught to draw from the shoulder, which means I had to be an arm's length away from my easel that had newsprint on it, and I had like a stick of charcoal that I would hold like this, and we would have to draw like this to like learn full range of motion on our arm. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm basically like classically trained in drawing. And before that I was self-taught, but I would only draw from the wrist. I didn't have good like posture for drawing. And I knew the moment I changed my major to animation that I would have to cultivate a lifestyle that would help me draw for like 6 to 8 hours a day. That's what I used to be doing when I was a workaholic. I'm getting better at that. So nowadays I draw like 3 hours a day, maybe up to 6 if it's a really busy drawing day and I have to draw off stream. But yeah. Flapu has the hammer. He can bonk peeps. Yeah, Flapu can bonk. Flapu is the mod. Flapu's non-binary, I think. So am I, but I don't care about which pronouns you use. You use whatever you like. Choose your favorite. What's better for making a comic, iPhone, iPad, or PC? I don't know about iPhone, but people make stuff on iPads. I don't use Apple devices. I refuse to. I work on a PC, personally. But that's also because I do this professionally. So, you know, you choose the tool that you enjoy using, especially if you're just starting out. Use what you've got. It's not about what's best, it's about what works for you. Because there are scales to this thing. You know, you do not need professional grade equipment if you're still practicing to learn to draw or to make comics. Just use what you've got. Hell, I started off with printer paper and pencils in like high school. I had sketchbooks. I would draw my comics. I would ink my comics on paper. So, you know, it's the principles don't change just because of the medium. Choose what works for you. Whatever works for you is the best thing. It's easy to get caught up on the hardware or the software. But if it serves your purposes, then that's what it is. Say, Lord Sera, do you know Janitor AI? What about Janitor AI? No, you don't need to, Ramen. It's fine. It's one of those character AI chatbot extravaganza websites. Yeah, I would, Ramen, I would not recommend it to you. You're still very young. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody, actually. Mostly because of the whole AI LLMs are eating the environment at the moment. But Janitor AI doesn't have, good safeguards. I pay close attention to the AI space, the so-called AI space. I think any artist online ought to be aware of it. Like, at most, the chatbots, the character chatbots, are like a toy. But it can be addictive, which is where the hesitancy comes in. You beef ramen now? Makes you feel like you're in a comic? Ah. Well, you can do what you like, HR. Ain't nobody stopping you here. But there are limits to what LLMs can do. They're simply pattern crunching machines that have eaten the knowledge of humanity and they spit them out, and what LLMs do are reflect ourselves. They're just an imitation of a parrot, really. For all of the branding for AI, it's not really artificial intelligence. Intelligence implies consciousness. These are machines and algorithms. What? Oh, ramen. Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. Like, these chatbots are not intelligent. Almost all of them, like 90% of them, are based on OpenAI's API. But like, large language models in general are not logic machines. They are statistical average word machines. There's no thinking happening. There's no analysis happening. And it tricks you into making itself seem that way, because when it starts like replying in its response, it does it word by word to make it look like somebody's typing. That is actually a fallacy. It's already got the whole thing written out and it just presents it to you slowly. So it's large language models are largely smoke and mirrors for like creative use, and like I've messed around with them and they're really not very useful for creative things. You end up having to do most of the work anyway. Plus, nothing it creates can be copyrighted, so there's no professional use for it. For me, anyway, because your copyright is the single most important thing that any creator has. So that's important. Intellectual property. I learned that lesson the hard way a couple of times. Ramen. How about let's put this topic down, right? Let's not fight. People can do what they want on their own time. Alright? I don't need people coming at each other in the chat over chatbots. Alright, thank you, Soggy. Sera, do you only make BL comics? Currently, yeah. I have 2 non-BL comics on Tepes. I have a little horror short called Hyo, and I have my first professional comic, which is Swaha. It is an Indian mythology-inspired epic that was the first, like, major break that I had. And that one's a romance fantasy that centers women, for once, because women are not centered in Hindu stories. But BL is where, like, most of my attention's at. It's the stuff that I would rather make. So yeah. Bone Stare in particular, if it sweetens the pot, has a polycule ending. And it's a BL. So it's just like, it's fun. And Partners is the story of like how they managed to become a polycule, more or less. Guess what? What am I guessing, ramen? Remember, ramen, I don't do guessing games, just tell me. Chicken? Oh, that's soggy bread. What about chicken? Posture tech? Oh, guess what? Soggy, you're a bit late on the chicken butt. I'm glad that that joke is still funny to those younger than me. I thought it was a 90s thing. Then again, I have no sense of time. Fine, posture check. Everybody sit up straight. Tuck in your pelvis. Right? I have a little lumbar support roll. Let's not hunch over our keyboards and or phones. It's easier to sit up straight if your knees are slightly below your hips. It helps straighten out your spine. Makes it much easier to sit. Was born in 99? Okay, fine, Soggy. You're an honorary 90s baby. Alright, guys. Alright. It's a Twitch chat. Maturity is not really a requirement or expectation. I do, however, have a rule for the Twitch chat, which rule number 1 is be excellent to each other. Let's not start fights. I really don't want to put anybody on timeout. I mean, hey, the chicken butt joke was funny. Chicken butt is a perennial joke. It's funny when I was a kid, it's funny now. I laughed. Goodness, what am I doing? Flats for this page are done. Hooray! Good job, us. Progress. Do that next. What the? Yeah. Let's move on, guys, shall we? Sera, the Cake and Coffee comic is actually very good. Thank you. I rag on it. Very intentionally. I know it's not, like, awful, but I look at it and I'm like, Perhaps it would be more charitable to past me if I said it was very unpolished. It's cute. It's a cute little story. But like, I don't know, I look at it and I'm just like, ooh. It's not very good. But that's me ragging on myself because I've come such a long way. I'm very proud that I finished it. I'm very proud that it exists. So, stat. Cake and Coffee is really good, especially for your first comic. You should be proud, for real. I am. Like, by the time 2015 rolled around and I was getting into comics, I was already in college for art. And I'd been drawing... I've been drawing since I was like... I mark it when I was 10, because that's when I got my first How to Draw More manga book. And so that's where I got really into writing more stories. And then in middle school, I wanted to write a comic. And in high school, I started actually making comics, but like on paper. So even before Cake and Coffee, I was constantly working on a story and drawing and designing characters. And in fact, like, all the magic stuff that y'all see in Partners was inspired by the way I used to draw magic on paper with color pencils in, like, middle school. Like, it never went away. It just transformed. So that's why, like, no effort ever goes to waste. No amount of play goes to waste. When you're doing something creative. No amount, like, none of the practice is ever really going to waste. And I think that's a really good and optimistic thing. I've added to my two favorite... Well, hold on. I've added to my two fave emotes to 3. I see. Very good for you, Ramen. I finished packing my clothes. Yay! You did it, Soggy. I'm proud of you. Good job. Future Soggy will be so happy that you packed the clothes. Wait, what about everything else? So I saw you did say you needed to finish cleaning too, so gotta do that. Either way, good job. Help? Welp? Oh, welp. Wait, I didn't press. What do you mean Mark Sus is your third favorite emote? Sera found me out. Yeah, Soggy, I pay attention. Words matter. I mean, sometimes, yes, I'm very inattentive, but in this case, I'm very invested in you getting your packing done for your own sake. It'll only make your life easier. It's not gonna help me. Imagine not having to pack last minute. TY leader, oh my goodness. I'm not actually leader. Y'all are the real rock stars here. My free-thinking independent sheep. Goodness. I am sore from my workouts this week. I had to work out today too. I started a new calisthenics workout routine because I broke my habit of doing like weightlifting. But this way I don't have to mess with my adjustable weights. I can just practice. Because I can't do a push-up. I can't do like an actual push-up. And so I'm working up to that. And then I'm gonna work up to doing an actual pull-up, which I've never been able to do in my life. I've got goals. I'm gonna get strong. You have a Gojo Sakura plushie? Oh, that's nice. Anime plushies are nice. Ad! There's an ad. Give me 50 seconds and I'll reply to Ramen. As they melt down in chat. Ooh. Oh no! Oh jeez. Ah. It's fine. Everything's fine. I didn't almost lose my pen underneath my PC. That didn't happen. Oh hey Adam Bonds! I do wall push-ups. Me too! I'm doing wall push-ups at the moment. My goal is 30, but sometimes if I do 5 extra push-ups, one day I hurt my shoulders. Oh no! Yeah, so like wall push-ups, I can do 3 sets of like 25 to 30 before my arms start to give up. So I'm following something called Hybrid Calisthenics. I found him through YouTube Shorts. And he's like so positive and stuff about fitness that I'm just like, you know what? This seems solid enough. And his website, Hybrid Calisthenics, if you just like Google it, then he just has like 6 core exercises with progressions. So if it's too hard to actually do a push-up on the ground with your hands and toes, you start with the wall push-ups and he gives you like a benchmark to reach. And so my benchmark is trying to get 3 sets of 50 push-ups and have that feel easy to do before I move on to like incline push-ups where I get to something that's about waist height and like a couch or something is probably what I'm gonna use. And start doing push-ups at the incline, and once again try to get 3 sets of 50. And you move on from that in order to gain good posture, good form, and strength gradually. It's really cool. I'm like really into it because it doesn't require any setup, and the movement itself is a warm-up, so it's not like I have to warm up before doing weights. But yeah. You're doing physical therapy exercises? That's awesome, Adam Bonds. Good luck with everything. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to jump straight into it, and if you try to jump straight into it, it can feel very discouraging. And I've been there, I have. Like, I've been doing martial arts for 10 years, and I'm still struggling with, like, my weight. So even though I have practiced, and there's a lot of things I can do, I don't have a lot of the endurance that I wish I had. And so working on that while not getting discouraged and making it into a habit it's like a balancing act. And you kind of have to find your personal sweet spot so that, you know, you feel like you're making progress. And however you choose to do that, again, it's like, it's the thing that works for you is the best thing. Sarah, are small details actually that important? Because it feels like you're working super hard on them. Maybe it's just me being lazy AF because I do the bare minimum. I mean, depends on the artist. My art style has these sort of little details because they make me happy. Oh, his jacket. What color is your jacket, Davis baby? I exited out of it. Davis, come here. Check it. Close enough, and then I should grab his pants too, because I'm gonna need it later. This chapter in particular has more details because it's kind of like a climactic chapter for the arc of the story. So I'm putting in a little bit extra on these. But generally speaking, you don't want to have too many details on a character when making a comic, especially if they're going to do hundreds and hundreds of pages. So like Marcus's whole like transformation thing, I think I gave him 6 pages to have to draw all those details, and then no more. Then it goes back to normal Marcus, who's really, really easy to draw, and he doesn't have a lot of detail. But yeah, as you get better, as you get faster at art, as you gain more experience, you find that what used to take forever now takes less time, and so you end up seeming like you can do more detailing, but that's just because you've done it like a billion times. So with comics, it's a very pick your battles type of mentality. Some stuff needs lots of details, like this one doesn't need a lot of detail. His face doesn't need it because you're kind of like zoomed out. Like this is the size at which it's going to be read, so yeah. Did you answer my question? I was AFK. Oh no! I don't know. I like drawing, so the drawing itself doesn't feel like hard work. I like drawing, and I love my comic. I love my characters. I love the story that I'm trying to tell. And because I enjoy it, it's not work. Now, my arms might disagree. I may still get tired. There may still be days where I'm just like, ugh, I do not want to do anything because I'm fatigued, because I'm mentally fatigued, because some other part of my life has added some stress. But when I actually do sit down to draw, it's like one of the few activities that pretty consistently gives me the dopamine that I need to just sort of like feel content, I think. That's me. Drawing is a special interest. It's a hyperfixation, if you will. Happy, happy, be happy. Details equal happy. Yes, Soggy. Sometimes details make you very happy. I mean, I love detailing stuff. Like little details, little delicate things. So like when I do my comics, I'm like, gotta pick my battles. Otherwise I'm gonna actually hate this. And so, but like if I do like illustrations or stuff, then oh man, I go ham. Are you kidding me? If I get to spend more time on something making it look pretty, I'm just like, we're dressing him up. We're dressing him up in something he doesn't normally get to wear in the comic. But yeah. Let's see. Depends on the style. Kentaro Miura is all details. Koyoharu isn't. Yeah, depends on the artist. And yeah, we have a super quiet, super chill Discord, community Discord. You can interrogate Nightbot for the link, I believe, in the title of the Twitch. There should be commands for it. It's not the most active community, but it is pretty chill. It's a good place to get notifications for the live streams, because I always notify those who have the stream watch role in the Discord. I tend to be a little bit busy when I'm off stream, so I'm not always active on there. But make no mistake, my eyes are always on the server. Oh, great, these two have shown up. What's with the face ramen? Oh boy. You know what? Let's grab a page from the last chapter for Felix and Thaddeus, shall we? Where is him with his suit? I need his suit, and I need Felix's uniform. That'll do. Sera, you put so much work into them, but honestly, people like me just scroll past a whole ep in a minute. You shouldn't stress too hard on the tiny stuff. I mean, that's been real the whole entire time I've been doing comics. Like, yeah, sure, a majority of people will only spend a little bit of time reading it. But the people who really engaged with my comics, the ones who commented on every episode, lots of people have gone and said, hey, I went back to reread old episodes because the art's so pretty. So, I'm not really making the comic for the people who read a mile a minute. I'm sure they'll enjoy it all the same. But I am making the comic for the people who will enjoy it to pieces. You know, there's a thing when you're creating stories, and this happens to a lot of creators, is that our inner critic always sort of imagines the worst possible reader, right? The reader that's just gonna, like, tear us apart. What I try to do, because I read this somewhere, what I try to do is I try to flip it over. I try to be like, what if the best possible reader found my comic? What if someone who is just waiting for a story like this finds my comic, and then they sit down and they pore over the art, and they just, like, love it? It's them. I try to imagine my best reader when I'm making my work. And me, I'm my biggest fan of my own art. As much as I make fun of my own shit, right? As much as I, like, make jokes, I love my work. I love my stories, I love my characters, and I love how I get to draw them. So I am my own biggest fan and my worst critic in one. And I will go back and I'll reread my comics for me. And I think that's what matters. Like, yes, I do make stories to share with people, to communicate with people, to give them something nice, but they're not the reason I do it. I do it because I've got opinions. I've got shit to say. And I do it through stories. I write stories to process life events in a way that feels safe. Because sometimes life is hard. And bad shit happens. And you can't deal with it in a literal sense, so you can deal with it in a metaphorical sense. And that's what I use stories for. So I'm not too worried about how fast or slow people read my work. Because I'm not making it for them. I noticed the chat moving really fast. I love Sera's art. Thank you, Sagi. Artists who also read examine the art, they too. Oh! Juancita, it's okay. No, it's totally okay. Calm down. It's okay. Don't worry. I didn't, It's nothing against you. It's not. Don't worry. It takes a lot to offend me. It's not a big deal. I do like to be informative, and I do tend to talk a lot. But yeah, no, in the end, I try to make it so that hopefully it's helpful to everyone. But like, it's totally okay, you apologized, it's all good. We're good. We're all here to enjoy art. Here to enjoy the comic making process, make the most of it. Is that actually the color of his pants? Do I have... It is, the pants are darker, so... Pants. And then... God, look at Thaddeus! He's so nicely shaped. I'm really proud of this panel. Good lord. All my boys are so handsome. Uniform. Color. Logo. So. Good. And then Thaddeus. My big baby boy Thaddeus. Oh. Where's that going? Okay. Those are two different colors. Shirt. The tie is black. That's the silver. And this is the suit. Alright. Let's name our colors. Suit. Silver. Shirt. Hair, gray eye, green eye, and skin. Cool. Did I get everything I need? I did, yes. And then for Felix, I just need the uniform, because in this panel, Baby Boy's just in his uniform. Alright. And dark shoes. Cool. Thaddeus, oh my god, soggy. He kinda is though, the Thaddeus being handsome. He's very handsome. My sad boy. Am I the only person who screams whenever I see handsome art? Nah. I scream internally. There's nothing wrong with being excited over a thing. Like, I mean, I remember the days of high school anime club. And while me personally, I'm not that outwardly excitable, I do get very excited if I'm just like, ah, so nicely shaped. Look at that Dorito. The Dorito shape for the dude characters. Soggy, your spelling. Ramen spelling is overrated. We're on the internet. Who needs spelling and grammar? What are you, a square? I feel like you need to have a certain old-timey accent to pull off the whole, like, 1920s insults. Darius AI. Soggy. It's not a thing. It's not really a thing. Dadius is just what Soggy Bread calls this character here. His name is Thaddeus. But because of how he is, that's Soggy's nickname. Lucy from Peanuts pulls off the blockhead insult. Oh, sure. I literally searched it up. It's not a thing! HR, it's not really a thing. It's a joke. It's not a thing. It's not a real thing. There. What time is it? Oh, 3:20. I really want to get those pages done though. I feel like we could do it. If I lock in, if I buckle in, I may be able to get it done, because this is the last panel for flats. Yeah. Now for Felix. Cute baby boy. Precious Felix. He got second in the popularity contest that I did at the end of Bones Tarot when I was on hiatus for the last chapter or so. And I was doing all this like bonus content stuff, and I did a poll. Davis won first place, Felix won second, Thaddeus and Marcus tied for third. It was great. I had a lot of fun drawing the results. I'll show it to you guys later if we get these pages done. Though you can also read them on Taphouse. They're like free pages. It's like the bonus stuff that's at the very, very end now. So I moved it so that people could have a clean reading experience. Cool. Here we go. Now it's gonna go a little bit faster. Because we're gonna start doing renders. New business idea? Soggy, no. No, it's 1 PM. Ramen. Felix is cutie as well? He is. Also, Felix is spelled with a PH at the front. Felix. I did that because I'm always fascinated by words that are not pronounced the way that I think that they should. English confuses me sometimes. It's not my first language. And, like, things like phone was always a word that caught me by surprise when I saw it written down when I was younger. And so I'm like, Felix. But not normal Felix. Felix with a PH. I wanted my baby to be special. I forgot. It's all good, Soggy. Oh my god. Ramen. Nobuli. It's all good. Hell, if Tim was here, we would know that Tim can only remember like 2 of the characters' names at a time. My dad born in Puerto Rico, so Home Depot confused him. Oh no! That's so valid though! The word depot shouldn't have a T at the end. It's depot. Oh, that's thunder. We have thunderstorms every single day for like the next 8 days here. But I would take thunderstorms over hurricanes any day. Any day at all. Give me all of the summer thunderstorms, just no hurricanes, please. Please, thank you, goodbye. Oh, shit. Oh, that's not done. You're not done yet. I used to make my names have a million vowels and use less consonants, like Kailerin. At that point, Adam Bonds, you're just decorating the name. And I ransack baby name books. Yeah. The baby name websites are the best place to find names. Because they have like meanings and popularity, you can sort them by year. It's an amazing writer's resource. Baby name websites are amazing. Let's see, Sarah, if I start reading your comics, please assure me no one dies or something tragic happens. It's been forever since I read an online comic. I want it to actually be good and not emotionally wreck me. Sure. So, Hyo, the short story, that's a horror story. Expect death. Bones Tarot, surprisingly, nobody dies. Yeah, nobody dies. It's a very sort of like thriller in a bottle type of story. Bones Tarot has a happy ending. It's very optimistic because I wrote it at a time when I was a much more optimistic person. Surprisingly, nobody dies in Bones Tarot. The ending of Swaha is a little bit bittersweet, but not, like, unexpectedly so. Well, maybe a little unexpected. It's a little bittersweet. One character dies. Let's see, Fairy Phase is the one that I did after Cake and Coffee. Nobody dies on there, but there is, like, fantasy violence. Skyblade is unfinished. It's kind of like a pilot episode. It's like a shonen sports manga, so nobody dies in that either. It's just silly. Periodically... No, hold on. It's my Elements one. Whatever, the one about the periodic table of elements is just silly gags. It's adorable, it's cute. I don't know when I'm gonna continue it, but I kind of want to. What else do I have? The Moon Fairy. Nobody... it's halfway done. The Moon Fairy's half done, it's on hiatus. Nothing bad happens yet. It's gonna have a happy ending. Go to Sleep, My Lord is a short, spicy comic that is censored. Nobody dies in that one. It's also only like it's very short. So yeah. Apart from Hyo, I don't write tragedies. Yeah. Oh, there's an ad starting in 30 seconds. Can I read it, Sarah? Read what, Ramen? Ramen, you should read Running... Tim. Tim. Hi, Tim. Tim, Ramen is a baby that was born in 2011. Ramen's not allowed to read that one. That's why I heckin' censored it to death. I had to make it PG-13 and appropriate. Ah, jeez. There's wires everywhere and I'm gonna knock something down one of these days. I already nearly lost my pen earlier. Anyway, hi Tim! What's up? Oh, joints. I just felt something pop in my spine. I hate fluff, give me angst. Aw, nah. I mean, I'm balanced. I go by the Jane Austen rule, where like there will be a slow burn and angst, but everyone gets a happy fluffy ending at the end because I love happiness. I love kindness and empathy, and that's how the end of my stories turn out. Because despite everything I've been through, somehow I still believe in the best of people. At least I try to. I'm sure Superman would be proud. Berserk is peak. Ramen was literally suggesting Berserk, they'll be fine. I know, Soggy, but it's the principle of the thing. I refuse to peddle my spicier comics to those who are underage. No. I have to be a responsible adult and draw the line. Like, if they choose to read it, it's on them, but I will not suggest it. And that is why I'm very careful when I censor stuff. Sarah, have you read Haunting Adeline? Is that a comic? Lots of all cap stuff in chat. Angst gives the major sides and ruins my day, if not my week, so I like angst to be balanced. I don't like to feel worse after reading something. I feel you, Adam Bones. Me too. That's why, like, I have to, like, prepare myself if I know I'm going into a story that doesn't have a happy ending. Where it's like, alright, if I'm prepared, then I can, like, I can engage with the story on, like, an artistic level and not on a personal level. But, like, in my personal reading, I will go through any hardship so long as it feels worth it in the end. Because I prefer reading prescriptive stories, which is where the characters learn something and grow, as opposed to giving an example of what not to do and it ends as a tragedy. So, like, I totally get that. Like, we each engage with fiction from our own personal, like, life frame. So some people may, like, love tragedies, but they're probably in a better headspace to be able to, like, appreciate it. Or they use it as, like, I don't know. It helps. We like stories that sort of, like, justify our worldview. We like stories that make us feel more correct in our own lives. Like, most people don't like it when things are unfair, so we like it when the good guys win. That's my crackpot off the dome theory at the moment. Art is vibes. There's a ton of art and story out there. You can pick your favorite, you can enjoy it. If you don't like it, put it down. There's no police out there. There are no laws that are forcing you to, like, not put something down that doesn't serve you. If it's just like a story that you're reading. There's no need to suffer. Why are we shouting without punctuation? That just seems to be the vibe today, Tim. Is the dragony thing finished for this chapter? It is. It is. You see the center panel? The dragon details are gone. We've had 6 pages of dragon details. And that's it for now. But we might get to see it later. Sera Omaji, I just got my final Whizbang Inuyasha volume. You have them all now? That's awesome! I can now reread 3 times a year. I love that for you. Good job, Sagi. That's cool. I recently got a box. I got a set of the original Vampire Miyu manga from Japan because it was never fully translated into English. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to learn to read. And so I'm brushing up on my hiragana and katakana, and like every time I sit down to read the comic, I'm like writing down the kanji, looking it up, translating it, and I'm going slowly bubble by bubble until I like basically teach myself to read this specific manga at least, because the art is so pretty. It's so 90s shoujo gothic. Vampire Princess Miyu, Kyuketsuki Miyu is and I have all of the manga. It feels so good. It was a treat that I bought myself. Like it's something I did just to like, okay, I'm gonna treat myself to this thing. And I have all the manga and it's wonderful. It takes 5 hours to read a page. Hey, I'm learning Japanese. I will do it. I can do it. I can read most hiragana. It's just, it's so small. Because manga, Japanese manga, is printed in a smaller format than American translated manga. Like, my Kateko Hitman books are bigger than the Japanese ones that I have. It's just, they print it so small. I need like a magnifying... I've been using my phone to zoom in on dialogue so I can see the kanji clearly. The things I do. The things I do for the things I love. But it's worth it because I want to put in that effort. I want to do all these things because I love it. Don't get me wrong, I am not complaining. I am thriving. What's this? Special gold star for me? That's so generous of you, Tim. Thank you. Special gold star. I'm going to Japan soon? That's awesome. I've been waiting for the dragony thing to be done. Oh, for the dragony thing? Aw, thanks. Yay, we finished the dragony thing. Let's see. Oh wow, chat is moving faster than usual today. I may not keep up with all of it. Atom Bones, I know there are people who like villains, but when bad guys win or main characters die, I cry too much to enjoy it. Bro, same. Big time same. Growing up, I was always like just the one kid who's just sort of like everyone's like gushing over like the anti-hero or the villain or whatever, and I'm just sitting in my corner like, what about the good boy TM? What about the hero? What about him? He's my favorite. And then like everybody else just continued gushing, and so I just ended up being quiet, and I never told anyone about it because it's just kind of like. It's kind of like how I like the character Edward from Sense and Sensibility, and he's just like this adorable, awkward, just like good guy, but he's not like dramatic or dashing or particularly witty or anything like that. But I'm like, sometimes you just want a dude like that. Sometimes you just want someone who's just sweet and good. I don't know. I have a very strong sense of justice, even in fiction, so like, I don't care how charismatic the villain is. If they do bad things, I don't like them. And no one can change my mind on it. I don't care how hot the villain is. He murdered XYZ. Goodbye. Maybe that's the good thing about fiction. I can have my thing, you can have yours, and we can go our own way. Boop. Oh, who did Boop the Snoot? Oh, I missed it. I'm so sorry, Soggy. Sorry. You are justified in yelling at me for the boop. Alright, Soggy, you're ready? Are you there? You ready? Here it comes. Boop. That's for you. Soggy got their boop. Yeah. Shout out to those who get emotional over stories. You're the real ones. And so is everybody else who just enjoys stories in their own way. Because we're all humans from different walks of life, and we all get different things out of stories, and that's just how it works. Nice. Oh, Soggy. Yeah, I couldn't finish Death Note. It was fun though, while it lasted. I know I watched the Japanese movies for Death Note are nice. The live action ones? I liked those. But yeah, I couldn't finish Death Note after a certain point because once a certain character died, I was just like, ah, I have lost completely all interest in this story. Yeah. The cat and mouse game was just gone by that point, and I'm just like, well, I don't care anymore. I think that's the most riskiest thing. You have to make your readers care, because the moment the readers say, "I don't care what happens to these characters," is the moment your story dies. You gotta give them a reason to keep turning the page. And that's where kind of like knowing your audience matters. And knowing yourself when you're reading stories as well. To know your own limits. What time is it? Yeah. We're not finishing these today. I guess we're gonna finish them on Friday. Otherwise, Flappo's gonna show up in chat and then yell union rules at me. Because it's not crunch time. Which means I should take my rest. I should end work on time. I want to see Flappo. I mean, I say that, but Flappo is busy. Did I read the panel right? Davis says that Marcus was beautiful. Yeah. It was a whole vibe, Tim. I was kind of like just I was half doing it as a joke, but it was so cute that I'm just like, I need to keep it because like Davis loves fashion, right? Like I bet Davis has mastered pretty makeup and Davis makes his own clothes and just like seeing this whole vibe on Marcus, like pure aesthetic adoration from Davis is what this face is. It's the dragon mode. You saying the dragon mode is beautiful. Because Davis is a good boy. What on the earth? Automod highlighted a weird thing there. I'll allow it, but let's take it easy on the ranting. Just a little. Just a little. It's all good to let things out. But how about we talk about the things that we like? Ramen. I mean, just the whole paragraph you wrote. That's what I mean. Let's not get too heated. There's a certain vibe I try to cultivate in chat. It's all good to have opinions, it is. But I believe there's more merit in talking about things that we like than what we hate. There's a time and place. Want to talk about Davis? Davis is #1 fan approved. Davis is this dark-haired character from Bones Tarot and Partners. He's the cutest and everyone's favorite, and he's the healer, and we protect the healer. But yeah, I mean, look, there's 10 minutes left in stream. I would like to end it on a good note. We're here to have a good time, we're here to enjoy art. We talk about all kinds of things. But in the end, I would like to cultivate good vibes here. There is enough vitriol out in the world that we all have to deal with, at least in this little corner. Wanna keep the nice lights on here. Whatever phrase works. Y'all know what I mean. Ramen. Ramen is $3.50. I think I can finish shading this page and then we'll have to call it a day. Assuming I can do it in 10 minutes. Are you live tomorrow? No. Tomorrow's my day off. There's a schedule on the Twitch channel when the stream is over. There is a live on Friday, yes. Tomorrow's the day off. Friday is the usual time. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. That is correct, Robin. Yes. Yeah, the schedule is posted on my YouTube channel and on the main Twitch channel. It's like you can see it under a tab called Schedule, I think, when the stream isn't live. I do my best to update it with like vacation days if I know I'm not going to be streaming, and I send out a notification on the Discord. As well as a notification on my YouTube community. I do my best. Sometimes I forget to say, hey, there's no stream today if like something comes up. But barring unforeseen circumstances, we'll be back on Friday, and we'll finish these pages. I overestimated how fast I render. Yeah, it's a chibi of some sort. Davis is one of the characters. He's one of my characters. Oh, I'm adding 2 minutes. I'm going to snooze this one because we're ending soon. Nice. Got 5 minutes left. His face does look a bit like a mochi. He's cute. Oops. Alrighty, we have a minute left. Why are we doing no bully? I don't know anything about voice changers, but see, Ramen, you see all the crying emojis, see what I mean? Don't leave us, I'm not going nowhere. But, like I say, this is my work day, and y'all just happen to be here. Which means, when the work day's over, I head out. 'Tis the way of things. Don't cry. It's alright, this happens every time. I'm used to it. I'll miss you. Oh, Yasagi will miss you too. Have a safe trip. Finish your packing. Last I checked, you only had your clothes done. Finish your packing. You'll appreciate yourself later. We will reconvene on Friday. I hope everyone has a good Thursday. Drink water, stretch your limbs, go outside, get some sunlight if you can. What else? As always, thank you for the company. Let's try to keep things chill and chat. And I will see you all Friday. Everyone take care. Bye-bye.